Guys, the third season of Squid Game has finally been released. Personally, I binged the whole series in just one day. I'm a huge fan, and by the way, this little necklace you always see me wearing here, look, it's from Squid Game. And I'm making this video just to shower it with praise and do a full analysis of Squid Game here with you all. But however, nevertheless, in this video, I want to talk about the things that didn't make sense to me in the series, specifically in this season, right? Since I've already made videos about the others. But just to be clear, none of the things I'm going to mention here that didn't make sense in the series mean that the season was bad. Quite the opposite. But let's get into it, because even though the season was really good, there were definitely a lot of things that didn't make sense, at least to me, and I want to know if you agree, so go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comments for each point I bring up, alright? The season starts off really well, coming right after that ridiculous revolution they pulled at the end of the second season, right? And it starts off good, it starts off cool. But then there's a moment in a specific scene that, I don't know about you, but for me it was just so cringeworthy. Of course, the way it played out ended up leading to the same result, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But it's worth pointing out here because that particular scene just made no sense at all, and it was the scene with soldier number 11. Why? We find out right at the start of the season that she actually didn't kill one of the players in the last round, and we also find out it's because he's the father of the little girl she met at the beginning of the season, right? And that's why she didn't want him to die, because otherwise the little girl would die too, and she kind of saw the girl as like her own daughter, you know? So she doesn't kill him and pretends she's handing over his body to have his organs removed, like they already do in there, right? And up to that point, it's all fine. But from there, things start to get a bit cringeworthy, which is what, after that, she goes to try to find him, right? She tries to find the body so she can save the guy. And to do that, she goes to talk to one of the guys she had already pretty much gotten into a fight with, like they'd even thrown punches because she didn't want this whole organ harvesting thing to happen. And out of nowhere, just like that, the guy suddenly believes she just changed her mind out of the blue. No, now I agree, I changed my mind, I thought it over, and I really think we can just kill people and go around taking their organs. Before, I didn't believe in that, but starting today, out of nowhere, I changed my mind. And the guy's like, man, alright my friend, you changed your mind, it's all good. Then she goes and asks to see where the guy is, asks to see the surgery, asks to see everything there, and the fool just believes her. And on top of that, he actually thinks she's interested in him romantically. No, seriously, this guy is a next level fool for God's sake, right? It doesn't make any sense, but, well, if you think about it, since the guy is such a huge fool, you can kind of suspend your disbelief and go along with it. But what happens next when they get to the room, well, that's just too much. And I want to know if you remember this scene, which is what? They go into the room, the guy and soldier number 11 come in, they're armed, right? They've got their masks on. The guy, the fool, comes in, takes off his mask right away, puts his gun down in the corner, and goes to talk to everyone. Then starts explaining to the group why he brought the girl and all that blah 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 blah. At that point, everyone was unarmed, even the fool who brought her there, and she was the only one with her mask on and armed, holding her gun right here. Then she goes and takes off her mask, puts her gun on the table, and goes to talk to everyone. That part one just didn't get, you know? Because to me, if she was armed and everyone else was unarmed, and the guy even had his back to her, she could have taken everyone out, left just one alive, and that's it, she could have stayed right there. But no, she took off the mask and put the gun aside, so I thought, there must be some logic to her doing that, there must be a reason. But no, it was just so she could do a John Wick scene, that's all. Just so she could go around beating people up, bam bam bam, hand to hand, and make things a bit harder, because honestly, what made sense was for her to just stand there with a gun and shoot everyone bang bang bang. Unless she got there and the guy with the mask demanded that she be unarmed, right? Then, okay, that would make a bit more sense, but the way it happened, honestly, for me, you know? Again, even though it would have ended up the same, right? Because she ended up killing everyone, leaving one alive, and moving on with the situation, which is what was supposed to happen anyway, even if she had just shot everyone right there with the gun, which would have made more sense. Second point, the mother and son not being on the same team in that hide-and-seek game. I'd say this didn't really make sense, right? But it was more of a plot device so that what happened next could actually happen, which was really awesome, right? It was super tragic, but it was awesome. It was cool. And that could only have happened if they were on different teams, right? But since the show gave them the option to basically choose which teams they wanted to be on, and they could have easily switched to the mother's team, this situation just didn't make any sense. It simply didn't. There's no way you can buy into that. There's no way you can believe that the guy, whose mother had already said he wouldn't have the guts to kill anyone, and he knew he wouldn't have the guts to kill anyone, would choose to be on the red team when he had the option to be on the blue team and protect his mother. His thing was, no, I'll go to the red team, then I'll kill someone, as if he was actually going to do that, right? Then he says, after that, I'll go and protect you with my little knife, as if he'd actually hurt someone, even to protect his mom. Of course, obviously, it would have been much better if he'd stayed on his mother's team, because then the group would have been 3, the trans woman, who was the strongest, and the other 2, the pregnant woman and the old lady. If the son had been there too, it would have been another support, another help. Like it or not, he's a man, and when it came to protecting his mother, at least in a fight, he could have done something, right? But no, he chooses, I'll be on the red team. I didn't buy it. Personally, I just didn't buy it. What about you? What did you think? Leave it in the comments. Third point, moving on to the final game. We see all that mess going on, people throwing themselves here and there, right? To move on to the next stage, we know they have to knock out at least one person per level, right? So at least 3 people would have to be eliminated. But when it gets to the second level, there's that whole mess and almost everyone dies. So only Gi-hun, the girl's father, and the guy who was already beaten up are left alive. At that point, it was already decided. It was over. The guy was already beaten to a pulp. The girl's father was ready to do whatever it took to get out of there alive. Everything was already set, my friend. All he had to do was hold the guy here. If they got their hands a little dirty, gave him a few hits, that would be it. Take him to the other side, start the game, throw him in, and it's done. Everyone wins and we all go home. But no, there has to be that. I don't even know if it's a matter of doesn't make sense. Yeah, it doesn't make sense either, but it's much more about making the script easier, right? The guy who's all beat up, he wasn't at the edge of the platform, but somehow manages to crawl all the way to the edge without any of the others noticing, even though he was basically their free pass to get out of there. Then the girl's father, who would do anything to survive, doesn't notice the guy crawling to the edge, even though the guy already knew he was going to die. What difference did it make if he died there or died somewhere else? There's no difference at all. So all they had to do was keep an eye on that guy. No, they just let the guy crawl to the edge and throw himself off. Does that make sense to you? To me, zero sense. Which brings me to another point, the baby's father being the final villain of the story. I didn't really like that. I mean, there's no comparison with the villain, with the final villain of the first season, right? Because he was really well developed, he was a friend of Jinwoo and all, and they used to play that game when they were kids. It was like epic, it was beautiful. But I don't know if it would even be possible to create a guy to be the final villain as good as the one from the first season. But I just didn't buy the baby's father. I think that if somehow the baby's father had sacrificed himself to save the boy, it would have been better. I didn't like him as a villain, him threatening to kill the boy, his own son, when at the beginning of the game he was risking his life to save the baby. He was just pretending for those guys, acting like he was part of their team. So the whole time he was strategizing to save the baby. Then at the end, just because it came down to the two of them, he goes, "No, I'm going to risk my baby's life." And especially with Gi-hun being there, it would have been way better to say, "No, give me the baby here, we'll go to the next game and you jump off." But no, like in this case, it wasn't even a matter of not making much sense, right? It's more that I just didn't buy his outrage about sacrificing even his own child so he could survive in the end, since he didn't seem like that kind of guy the whole game, right? The second to last thing that didn't make sense was the detective storyline in the series. From the second to the third season, right? Because in the second season, fine, his storyline was interesting. He was trying to get there at all costs, get to the island with the group and cause chaos there. But then comes the third season. What did I think was going to happen? At some point, they were going to find out about the captain. They were going to manage to, defeat him there, arrest him, kill him, whatever it was. Some people would survive and they'd manage to get to the island and they'd do something there. But no, the guy just spent the whole season, both seasons, trying to get to the island. And in the end, he gets to the island for nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The guy went there just to take a stroll. He got there, right after everyone was already leaving, saw his brother, blah, 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 blah. Why? Why? And that's it. His brother was gone, he leaves, and that's the end of it. Honestly, I thought his whole journey was pretty lame. Not the journey itself, right? But the detective's ending was really lame. Really lame. And last but not least, the guy who made the least sense in the whole season. Not the whole thing, right? But 70% of the season and 30% of last season, which was the main part, Gi-hun. Our dear and beloved protagonist Gi-hun, who I really like a lot, even though the script messed him up in several moments, especially in this last season. Yeah, I like him, but you can't just make excuses, right? Because for the love of God, my friend, when he's at the beginning of the season, when he comes back, right? When they bring him back in the coffin and he's all dazed, you can understand. You can understand why he's all messed up, totally out of it, right? He tried to pull off that half-baked revolution, which I already said made no sense at all, right? But he tried. He screwed up, his friend died. So he came back kind of messed up in the head, not knowing why they let him live. And up to that point, fine. But the fact that he got hung up on that kid who didn't have the guts to go back to his half-baked revolution, man, for the love of God. My goodness, what a ridiculous thing. What a mess. Right? The idiot was the oldest guy. He was the leader of the whole thing. The mess, he screwed everything up, knows it was all his fault, and then wants to blame. No, it was your fault. It was your fault. The kid, just a boy, I don't know, not even 20 years old. The guy didn't have the guts to go back there to the mess to die, to finish killing himself. If he had stayed there, at least he would have had a chance to get out alive. Then the guy comes back. No, it was your fault. Because it was your fault. It was your fault. It was your fault. So what was I imagining? No, that can't be. They're going to do that. But at some point, Gi-hun will realize and say, no, it really wasn't your fault. It was mine. I was the one who did that. But no, the script started and ended by basically doing what it said it wanted to do, which was to have Gi-hun cancel the other guy. For God's sake. And he didn't even regret it, At no point do you see any remorse from him for having done that, no. He did it and didn't care. Just 2 episodes ago, he didn't want to kill anyone. Now, he killed a guy who helped him, right? Just got scared and didn't care at all. Up to that point in the season, for me, it was a disaster. They totally ruined poor Gi-hun. Then after that part, when the old lady talks to him and all, he kind of comes back, right? Goes back to being more like how he was at the start of the second season. But still kind of an idiot, right? Then he even helps the girl in that challenge, the girl and the baby in the jump rope challenge, right? And he goes to the final challenge wanting to protect the baby at all costs and all that. He does some dumb things at the start, believing that the guys are really going to do a raffle, right? But even that wasn't as bad, right? There was also the thing at the end where the guys didn't press the button to start the game before the fighting broke out, right? Because otherwise, since we're going to kill each other here, at least we should press the button to start the game. Because if you die, right? No, you have to die first, then go start the game. And there had to be that scene which was impactful, but I wish it hadn't happened. And that's it, guys. Those were all the situations that I thought didn't make sense in this last season of Squid Game. Last season, right? We're still going to talk more about that in the next video where, as I already told you, I'm going to heap praise on this last series, this last season, right? Because it was fantastic despite those little things, those details. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. See you in the next video, all right? Thanks.